of how not to be a terrible school board member. Mr. Tenney.
Okay, super. So at the board's request, we're restarting our book study that we had been doing in the past. And I want to point out a couple of things really quick, and then we can just spend 10, 15 minutes talk about whatever insights you had as you studied. First of all, the title of the book seems a little edgy, and it's certainly not intended to be from my point of view. I think probably as a marketing tool, they tried to come up with something that was a little bit funny. It's a common thing. I think I mentioned this to the board when we first started talking about it. I looked up just really quickly, did a Google search. Is this the only kind of approach that this has taken? I found online in 30 seconds how to be the absolute worst backpacker at the campsite. It's intended to get people's attention toward how to be a good backpacker at the campsite, right? That's the idea. How to be a horrible teacher, tips and tricks to do your worst. Obviously, we're not suggesting that teachers are horrible in general or whatnot. There's no suggestion of that there. 6 easy steps to becoming the worst parent ever and not to be outdone by the others. 7 classic mistakes of new superintendents. So those are all this kind of we're going to take the opposite approach in terms of the title or whatnot to be a little bit funny and to highlight what's a real positive thing to do, which is the idea. Obviously was behind this book. There was no intent initially nor now to say we have terrible board members or we have people that show a great potential to be terrible board members or whatnot. And as you saw going through it, each one has lessons for both administrators, particularly the superintendent, and for board members. So that was kind of the thought as we just kind of go through together. Again, not meaning to be edgy or point fingers or anything at all. I hope that everybody is clear on that. All right,
we're not offended.
Good. Okay. I just didn't want to offend at all. Again, this was brought to us. Where else is it? We just found out there's another district. Oh, I remember what it was. I was at a Yavapai County administrators meeting just a couple of weeks ago, and one of the administrators there who works around the state was visiting and said, "Hey, you know what? I just heard about this great book. You might consider as a book study." I say, "Hey, we're actually doing that in PUSD." And she thought, "That's terrific. You're ahead of the curve." So there are definitely other boards across Arizona and across the United States that use this for the very same purposes that we're using it for. I'm hopeful it'll help us all get even better at working as a team to govern our school district effectively. So each of these is broken into scenarios. How many are there? They're all called terrible habits. There's 28 of them. So if we do 2 a week, we'll be done with this, in a year and a little bit. We'll see if that's the pace we want to keep or not. But terrible habit number 1 was humiliate a district employee in public. Obviously, the titles of each of these are things that we don't want to be doing, right? And what do you remember from the scenario? We all read this in the last few days. Maybe just a board member can share with us what the scenario was.
I can.
Yeah.
So it was essentially that someone was giving a report and the report wasn't done very well as far as the information that was being presented wasn't presented in a professional manner, and it just came across pretty unprofessional.
Sure.
And the board member really wanted to correct that situation in public instead of either through the superintendent or just letting somebody know that more work could be done ahead of time before the presentation. But
absolutely. Now, those of you who've been with us for a while, been watching these for a while, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we generally have the problem that is presented as the context here in the first place. The reports that we get from our folks are generally quite good and informational and whatnot. In fact, Kelsey's going to give us another report here in just a few minutes, and I told her, "Now we're specifically talking about this scenario," and I said, "Make sure it's solid." She's like, "No problem." So, yeah, there you go.
Pressure.
There you go.
Yeah. The part that I kind of spun off of this was almost during meetings pointing out where there was a mistake. And I did a last meeting just with the resource officer. I mean, within that contract, there were some items that were left, and there was PHS, when it was Granite Mountain, and then the Granite Mountain. And I thought I probably could have done better homework and just said, "Hey, look, there's some typos in there," rather than announcing it publicly. I thought I was being a steward of, "Hey, I'm doing my homework and I'm showing it," but not necessarily having to do that in public. So, I mean, I took that and kind of put a personal hit on myself.
Fair enough. Good reflection. Yeah, that's the form that we received it from the city, but you're right. We shouldn't have assumed that the city had crossed all the T's, because they had left the word PHS in there instead of Granite Mountain and whatnot. So yeah, good point and good reflection. So for each of these, as you recall, there's they present the scenario. Here's what the school board member did. He usually uses his own name as the terrible school board member, the Richard E. Meyer. Board member Richard did this. Could Richard have done a better job? And obviously the correct response, so to speak, was instead of pointing it out in a meeting or getting with the person in advance and saying, hey, Kelsey, I looked over your report and this is kind of a mess. Or what were the other options? Contacted your fellow board members and said, this is crazy. They keep doing this. What's the matter with these people? Or say, hey, you know what, you guys, I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty details of running the district. Let's come up with a procedure to make sure everything is right. And then the last one was, no, you were fine in the first place. Why not just point out in a meeting? The correct response, they said, was, get with if you see something in advance, give the superintendent, point that out. And that's her job or his job to get with those folks and say, hey, we can do better. We can do better with this. If we're going to present something in public, we got to make sure that it's ready for prime time, so to speak. So, any other takeaways from this one?
For me, when they were talking about option 4, the quote, talking to the other board members, it says, this violates the principle that the public's business should be done in public. And I think that's been, as a new board member, I've known each one of these other board members outside of the school board before I was elected to the school board, and it's a little bit odd for me to not be able to, discuss together things that the school board business needs to be done in public, and that was a great reminder for me. And then the final option, the quote, leadership by humiliation is a hallmark of a terrible school board member. And it's a hallmark of a terrible leader. And I loved that phrase and thought, as a parent, as a school board member, as an owner of a business, I need to make sure that I'm being as good a leader as I can be. And humiliation is not one of those attributes that I want to lead by. So.
Great.
I think what I took away is just being out in the schools is important too. This doesn't just apply in a meeting situation, but when you're out in the schools, recognizing your place, that you're not there necessarily to evaluate or to criticize you're there to observe and to see what's going on and to create those types of relationships with the staff that you interact with. Hopefully putting them at ease. I think it's always a little hard to put people at ease because you are a board member, and so people obviously try to do their best for you when you're there, but trying to just let people know I'm not here to evaluate you. That's not my role. I'm just here to see what's going on.
Great insight. There are a couple of things things that I underlined or highlighted under the superintendent's lessons learned. One was safeguards should be in place for the review of all materials going to the board before they're sent off. If we were starting to see any kind of an issue with that, I would be even more assiduous about that than I am now. I always check with people, right? I never, I'll be honest. I got with Kelsey a couple of times. I said, how's it coming? Do you have any questions? Do you need anything? And she's like, I got it. And I have not looked over it. I'm going to, the information she's going to share is not going to be new to me. The format in which it'll be presented and the order and whatnot is going to be new to me. But I have developed great confidence that anything that Kelsey produces is far above what I'm going to produce. So I'm very confident with that. If, on the other hand, the roles were reversed and Kelsey was saying, Clark's really not, measuring up, absolutely, we should put something in place to say, hey, if we're going to have a presentation from Mr. Smith, we've seen a couple of times that Mr. Smith is not quite hitting the bar. Let's put something in place. So that'd be a good lesson that I could learn from that. Superintendent could work on creating rapport with board members so they will feel free to let her know before the meeting if they receive substandard materials, et cetera. So that's a lesson to have a good relationships that your board members feel comfortable sharing concerns with you of any kind, whether large or small. Last thing that I underlined or highlighted, part of the superintendent's job is to help prevent board members from looking bad. So I'll work on that. I think you all look pretty good right now. But that's shared in the context of when the board member, Richard, whatever his name was, board member, started to say, this is a mess, right, in the scenario. You guys, what are you bringing crazy stuff to us for? The superintendent probably should have stepped in and said, that's a great point. Really appreciate you bringing that up. We'll follow up on that, offline, that kind of a thing, rather than have the board member continue to dig themselves a little deeper, falling down the wrong path. So All right, so there's terrible habit number 1. We just got a couple minutes left. Terrible habit number 2 is negotiating for the district. Who remembers this scenario and could summarize it for us really quick?
So I think basically this is, the board member hears from a constituent who happens to be the president of the teachers union, and that person wants to ask for help in a negotiating situation.
Yeah. This is what the teachers want.
Right.
We don't see the superintendent doing it.
Right.
We need your help.
And since the teachers union supported the candidate, he felt that he could take that on and didn't feel like saying, you need to bring this situation up with the superintendent in the proper negotiating situation.
Okay.
So,
Very good. One of the things I underlined from the context, which is absolutely true, it kind of led the person to maybe thinking that wasn't ideal in this situation, but last sentence, part of last sentence, when the teachers are happy, that is good for everyone in the district. You're just trying to make sure they're happy. I can see the mindset of the board member in this scenario, and what led to that mindset, the idea that when teachers are happy, that's good for everyone in the district, that principle is absolutely true. The best thing I can do for kids' success is to put good teachers in front of them. The best thing I can do to keep good teachers in front of them is to make sure that we're doing everything we can to support them in multiple ways, in terms of, supporting their teaching craft, in terms of making sure that they're reasonably compensated, to make sure they've got a great principal who's there for them, to make sure that they feel like they're being listened to. There's 10 things that help a teacher feel supported. Reasonable class sizes, all of those go into that. And it is true. If teachers are happy, then by and large, you probably have a successful district, and the opposite is true. So that principle rings true, but this person, in this context, they're suggesting probably took that a little too far. So what were the different options that were presented? Anybody share those?
Want to go?
What did the person do? What did the person do in this situation? What was one option?
Well, they agreed with the person that there needed, they didn't understand why the negotiations weren't going the way the person had hoped, and that they would be talking to the superintendent and seeing what's going on.
Yeah, I agree with you. We should have lower class sizes
Right.
there. We should have more teacher compensation. I'll take that on. What's
Right.
the problem with that according to this?
Well, what the person should have done was thank them for calling and let them know that we're informed, and we will have more discussion about it, but not commit one way or the other to what the district's going to do and how the district's going to be moving forward, and that there's people in place that represent the board in that negotiation already.
Right.
and I think undercutting the superintendent's authority in that case, by kind of giving away a negotiating position or whatever that may
Yeah,
have been in there.
that was highlighted here. For me personally, that's much less of an issue than
Yeah.
undercutting a majority of the board. Maybe the rest of the board totally agrees with that person, in which case, super, you're eventually going to be going in that direction. Maybe a majority of the board doesn't agree with that one board member or that union president, and you're not going to be going in that direction. And for a single board member to say, this is the direction that I'm going to try to make sure we head, is probably skirting the edges of appropriateness.
I think that's the key is you're a single board member, you have no power except as a board. And so I think it's important just to remember that we can't make those decisions.
Sure.
And typically, the board isn't involved in those negotiations, if there are negotiations.
Yeah. We actually have a little different format than many districts might, where unions have a little bit different legal authority to operate than they do in Arizona. We don't negotiate directly with the teachers union about what's going to be in contracts coming up. We certainly seek their input, as we do for all of people who work in our district and are constituents of our district, whether or not they belong to our teachers association or not. One other question I have, maybe we just wrap this up. Again, something I highlighted and underlined, it said, you should not be beholden to any group. You must see yourself as representing everyone in the district. Those are important principles, both of them, right? If you got a group of 12 of you that you're working with, there's a real problem there. There's 68,000 people that you represent. And then it says this, your decisions should always be based upon what's best for children in your district. I think everybody I've ever worked with on the board has that at heart. Many of you express that openly. And then the next sentence, and I agree with this, usually that will coincide with what is good for teachers, but not always. Can you think of an example off the top of your head where?
Probably need to roll in the next meeting. though.
Okay,
But
okay.
Yeah.
Maybe just kind of food for thought, are there scenarios in which a single teacher or a group of teachers might say, we want this, and though it's almost always best for students in general, student success, there might be scenarios when it's not, and you need to be kind of thoughtful about that. All right, that's it for this week. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is 5:15 for the February 4th, 2025 PUSD School Board meeting. So welcome, everybody. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Vanessa would like you to lead. Yeah, thanks. The next item is the approval of the agenda. Before we take a motion to approve it, we do have one exception, item 7B1. It's an out-of-state travel for the Challenge Club. Matt Dean is not here. He's actually announcing at the soccer game, the girls' soccer game, but Adam Neely is here, correct? Oh, there he is. Thanks, Adam. Yes, sir. All right. Okay.
Jane? Jane? Doesn't
Jane.
want to connect her.
Okay. We'll keep moving on. Just, we'll just mark in the meeting notes that Jane is not present. And when she does come in,
We'll try again a
include her.
little bit if we can, but yeah.
Okay. So for item 3A, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda with the exception.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Item 4, approval of minutes. Item 4A, approving the minutes for the regular study and voting session meeting of January 14th, 2025. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Motion second.
I'll second.
Motion seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Item 5, presentations. Item 5A, career and technical education student. We've got Max McVickers here and Miss Bailey. Come on up.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for having us. My name is Miss Bailey, Tiffany Bailey. I'm our CTE director of Prescott High School. Thanks again for having us this evening. Yet again this month, we want to highlight, showcase, boast, brag on our amazing upperclassmen students that are graduating with many honors, but specifically talking about last month you met Hannah Block, and then this month we're introducing you to Max McVickers, who will be walking across the stage in May. Max is a PHS two-sports scholar, student athlete, who has been on the 4.0 list with his 4.0 GPA. He's a member of the PHS mountain bike team. He wore the points leader jersey for the entire 2022 season. So he was younger, obviously, than he is now. So obviously a very talented athlete at a young age. He won the Northern Arizona Division Championship and placed 5th in state. He's a varsity player on the PHS men's volleyball team and the 2024 All-Region Middle Blocker. He's been nominated for leadership roles at school. He's on our SALT team, the Student Athletic Leadership Team. He is academically well-rounded and has taken many AP courses and many dual enrollment courses, including mine when I was still in the classroom. I had him as a Spanish 101, 102 student. And additionally, he's taken advantage of our multiple CTE offerings. He was in JROTC, was it freshman? Freshman. And then you will hear about his experience through taking aviation courses through our Mountain Institute Career and Technical Education District offerings. We call it MIC-TED. And our on-campus offerings of sports medicine with our trainer, Trent James, as the instructor. So without further ado, I would love to introduce you to Max and get to know a little bit more about him.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Hello, everyone. Maxwell, McVickers. I first want to thank you all for the opportunity to come speak in front of you guys. It's a big pleasure. So I'm going to talk to you guys about my kind of experience in high school with my CTE experience. Those 3 courses which Ms. Bailey mentioned was sports medicine, JROTC, and the aviation field. So first, a little bit about myself. I'm on the mountain bike team at Prescott High School, men's volleyball team, and I also enjoy the outdoors with my friends. That bottom right picture is a picture of me biking in Alaska, and above that is a picture of me skiing up at Snow Bowl. So those are just some of the things that I enjoy doing. This next slide is a little bit of a portfolio of accomplishments I've had throughout high school. 4.0 GPA, Dean's List, all 4 years of high school. Two-sport scholar athlete, played three sports my freshman and sophomore year. As Ms. Bailey mentioned, I was part of SALT. I partook in Special Olympics my freshman and sophomore year, and I did JROTC my freshman year. So the first CTE program I would like to move into is my aviation course that we did. So this aviation course, I didn't really know what I wanted to do early on in high school. I kind of wanted to do everything. I kind of wanted to be a firefighter at first, and then I wanted to get into the aviation industry, whether it be air traffic control, flying airplanes, being an engineer on airplanes, or working with drones. And this program kind of allowed me to see all aspects of those things. We got to work with flight simulators in the bottom right. Up top is the hands-on drones that we got to work on, and then this bottom middle is the radar simulators that we got to work with our professors there. They all did a really great job helping us out with that.
Hey, Max, is that at the YC campus or is that at PHS?
That is the YC campus out near the airport.
Near Ruger?
Yeah, the Ruger campus.
All right.
Yeah. So I had the most interest in unmanned air systems. So I got my FAA unmanned air systems certification, which means I'm a certified drone pilot, and I can use that to now reach out to companies and contract my skills out to others. So that's just one other thing that I have in my back pocket. And the other things I didn't take as much interest in, but one thing I really appreciated about this program is that it allowed me to see if I had interest in these programs. So the next CTE program that I went into is sports medicine. I've been in sports medicine for the past 2 years. It's run by Trent James. He does a great job of being a sports med trainer and also teaching the classes. He does both jobs there. So some of these pictures are us at our clinical rotations at the football games, and that top left is in class. We were using Play-Doh to kind of make different parts of the body. And one of the things I really enjoy about this class is that we can learn in class kind of about different ligaments or different muscles, and then in the games we can kind of see like what actually happens if somebody gets injured. We can work with the athlete just like we do in class, and we can translate that directly to athletic training. So athletic training was something that I guess I should say the medicine field in general is something I had a little bit more interest in. So that's it helped me kind of make my decision for college, which I'm going to University of Health Sciences and Pharmacy on scholarship to play volleyball there. And I'm still kind of deciding what I would like to major in. I'm in between physical therapy, some sort of doctorate degree, or maybe some sort of surgery degree. So, but of course that'd be way down the road. So that's kind of what I'm doing there. Sports medicine also has a club called HOSA, which I'm the vice president of the HOSA club, which allows us to go on trips, like we're about to go on a trip later this February. It's going to be with Bradshaw Mountain and Chino Valley High School. and it's going to give us more hands-on opportunity to understand what we might be doing in the medical field. And yep, that's sports med, and that's the last slide I have. So does anybody have any questions about kind of the CTE programs that I was in, or my experience with the CTE programs?
I'm wondering, in your work with the athletes, like in football or any of the other sports,
Yeah.
what was the biggest benefit you gained in helping an actual athlete, and then what was the most challenging situation you dealt with?
I think the benefit I gained, one of the biggest things was kind of the confidence that I gained from actually working with athletes, from taking what I learned in the classroom and translating that onto the field. I think that was probably the biggest benefit that I got. I think the biggest challenge was remembering all the steps to the process. Because if an athlete had a problem, you had to think back to all the hours in the classroom that you spent working on different skills. You got to remember which ones for which sort of injury or condition that the athlete had. So, yeah.
For the courses in the sports medicine arena, all dual enrollment? Or are they high school credit only? Okay. I
The
wasn't sure if
sports
all the CTE were dual enrollment.
I believe the sports medicines one were just high school credit.
But he earned dual enrollment credit with the aviation.
Aviation, yeah. Awesome.
And with me in SPA 101.
That's my job.
So Max, what certifications are you walking out of high school with? You mentioned the UAV. And what
Yeah,
else?
so the unmanned air systems certification, first aid certification, CPR certification, and we're doing the program called OSHA 10, and that gets us kind of a deeper certification within the medical area if we complete that field. So that'll be another one that I get at the end of this year.
That's great.
Nice.
So I'll be graduating with 4 different certifications.
Let me ask you a different question, totally off base, but
Yeah.
how many presentations have you done like this throughout your high school?
1.
This is it? Man, you
You're
nailed
very
it.
well prepared. Nice job.
Seriously,
Thank you.
great job.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Awesome.
So
Awesome.
you
Well,
can
thank
probably see
guys.
Max is unique in several ways. One, an exceptional student, a great young man, very well spoken, et cetera. Not every one of our students is this way, but he's representative of a large number of our students who really have a lot going on. You're sitting next to a couple right here. You've already seen that from Vanessa and Carly as well. The other piece that's relatively unique is he's been a part of 3 different CTE programs. We don't have a lot of students who've been able to do that. But we do have a huge, what's the total number of students enrolled in CTE one way or another, roughly?
About
right now?
530.
530 out of 1,500 kids at the school, and they're largely for upperclassmen. So it's a very large percentage of our students are involved in one way or another. Max sounds like he's heading down a track parallel to my own son, who took some CTE classes, got some certifications that could have put him right into industry. And instead of doing that right away, he absolutely could have done that. He used that as a springboard for his university studies, and very successful engineer now as a result of what he learned at Prescott High School. I'm hopeful you'll be on some similar paths here, Max. Thanks for being here tonight.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Max.
Max's proud parents are sitting in the back row there.
Thanks, Amy and Brian. Good job.
Good to have you here. Congratulations on raising such a great young man.
Awesome. We're going to move on to item 5B, standard-based report cards. Kelsey.
Good evening, everyone. So last month, we were able to talk a little bit about standards-based instruction, why we are making a movement towards that and implementing standards-based within our district. So the end result of standards-based instruction is standards-based grading and standards-based report cards. So I'm here to show you a little bit about what that means for our district and where we are in that journey. Just for something to keep in mind, this is our goal is to start standards-based report cards next year with kindergarten through 8th grade students. So one of the things that we had to do as we embarked upon this journey is we really had to look at grades and reflect upon why are we giving grades and why do we report grades through report cards. And so the biggest components that we had come up with were, first and foremost, it was to communicate academic progress and performance, not only to parents, but to students, and for teachers to have a really good grasp on where each one of their students is at. So a report card should inform parents and students about where they are towards grade level expectations. On grade level, how are they doing? That information should be used for teachers to guide instruction. They're constantly assessing, whether that's through formative assessment or summative assessment, but how are they using that information to guide future learning opportunities? Encourage student growth. If students know where they're at and they know what the end goal is, they're much easier, or there's an easier path for them to get there. If they don't know what that end goal is and they don't know where they're at, they're kind of floundering. They don't know where exactly they should be focusing their energy and their attention. Really to open some dialogue as well with parents. We want that report card to go home, and if parents have questions, concerns, we want them to easily have some information to have that conversation with their teacher. And then establish accountability. We know that our schools are accountable for teaching grade level standards, and so we wanted some way to track that to make sure that we were on target. We didn't want to wait for the end of year assessment to come back, which is the AASA, and go, oh, that's how we did. We wanted to make sure that we were tracking that all throughout the year, and again, communicating that to all stakeholders. So as we reflected upon the purpose of a report card, we really had to review the system that we had in place. And so this, you have a copy of this in front of you in case you couldn't see all of this. This is an example of what you might see as a parent in our district. So this is a screenshot from a student. There's no identifiable information on here, but this is typical of what a parent would see. Most parents can click on any of those grades and you can see a list of assignments and how students did. But this is what a report card looks like. So I have some questions that I would like to ask you as you look at this report card. So I want you to put your parent hat on for a second. And I would like to know, do you know what your child was expected to learn? Let's say we're looking at quarter 3. Do you know what your child would be expected to learn? Does that give you that information?
Unless you click on it, right?
Unless you click on it. And then is it as specific as you would hope? Most of the time it's just an assignment name or a test name.
If they got 73% or
Right.
93%.
But
So
not necessarily the
Power School,
skill.
Like in Power School, we could see that, and we could click on it and see what they're missing
Correct.
or not.
Correct.
But that's the extent of it. Right.
Yeah. So does this help you with the question of how is my child progressing towards proficiency? Where are they at? Are they on grade level? Are they not? Even if you were to click on those and see the list of assignments or assessments, you're probably not going to have that information very clearly. What are my child's strengths? Would you be able to answer that one?
But, I don't know.
Subject
Semi.
matter wise, potentially.
Correct.
It allows you to see that, but, yeah.
Not always even subject matter wise, because I know there's, all teachers grade differently. Teachers have
Yes.
different things that they're looking for, and
Correct.
certainly our kids know what teachers they want that are going to grade them easier or harder or whatever.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
it's not always a reflection on their skills just because they get, or their natural talents necessarily.
Correct. So would you be able to identify areas for improvement?
Yeah, like spelling, obviously, is an issue.
We could improve in our spelling situation.
Spell check.
So
But nothing specific. about
nothing specific.
spelling, right?
You're told, okay, we need to work on spelling. As a parent, you go, where do I start? What am I going to do? Where do I focus my time and energy? Do I just focus on a few words at a time? Are there any skills in particular? There's not a whole lot of information. Even if you click on the assignments, you're probably not going to see the skills that would help your student become more proficient. And the big question, again, that home and school connection is, how can I support my child? From here, you could go, okay, we're going to work on spelling. But again, you don't necessarily know the skills to work on. So while this does communicate some information, it's not really actionable information all the time that can pinpoint and target what students need to continue growing. And so that's where standards-based report cards come in. We know that our students need to learn the state standards in order to be proficient, but we know that those are skills that are necessary for them to become productive citizens when they're done with schooling. So, standards-based report card, it evaluates student progress on a continuous basis towards specific learning objectives or standards. Instead of traditional letter grades, it provides more detailed feedback about proficiency. So is your child proficient on a state standard or not? We'll talk a little bit about the scale that we'll use here in a second. But truly, standards-based report cards are here to help teachers, students, parents understand exactly what a student needs at any given point in time. We know that learning is a progression, and our students are in a variety of places, so it really helps create some steps for each and every one of the students in a classroom. So, I'll give you a couple of examples. So if you were to get a report card, let's say quarter one, this is typically what we would see, a 95%. Most parents are going to see this and go, okay, they're doing pretty good, and not necessarily think about it again. We see an A, we're pretty happy with that most of the time. That means that they're doing well, but are they at 100%? Have they mastered the content that they need? Every student has areas that they can continue to grow and develop, so how do we help them? If you were to get a standards-based report card, this is what quarter one would look like instead. So you see very specific skills that a student would need and what they were learning that quarter. And we'll talk a little bit about the 3s and 2s and what those mean here in a second. But from here, you're taking math and really narrowing it down to individual skills. When you get this information, you can clearly see, so the 3s here mean they're on grade level. A 2 means that they have some area where they can work. But one of the examples is I can find the product of two-digit numbers. As a parent, that's tangible. I can help them with that. I know exactly what I can do to help support my child. As a teacher, I know exactly where that student needs to work in order to continue to meet proficiency. So that scale that you see is the same scale that we are going to be using as a district, and it's from a 1 to a 4. What you can see down here is that a 1 is not meeting the standards. So if you're using this bicycle analogy, means they're riding the bike, they've got some skills, but they're not ready to do it yet without those training wheels. A 2 means you're progressing towards the standard. Okay, they're pedaling, they're working, they just might need somebody there to catch them if they fall. They might not be completely stable and independent. The 3, that's grade level expectation. They're doing exactly what they need to do at that level. They're right on target. We could have decided to stop at a 3, but again, we want to challenge those kids who maybe have already mastered that content. We don't want to forget anyone. So if they already have it, we want to continue to push them. So if they're a 4, it means they're exceeding that standard. They're going above grade level expectation. This one is funny. You can ride the bike, but you can also do those stunts. You can do jumps, you can do flips, all of the things. So that is the scale that we will be using. And again, this nice visual kind of helps parents get an idea of what does that scale mean? How are they using that to define proficiency or mastery towards a standard?
Are these aligning with the standard-based tests, though? So if we see this, and we have 10, 12 areas, and I know that my son he can do define 4-digit or a number sentence. I can hardly read. But is that aligned with our state standard?
Yes.
Would you? Okay.
Yes.
So then if we need to work on that one area, then when they go into the test, we're saying that that's an area they ought to do well when they go into the exam.
Yes, great question. So these skills that you see here are taken directly from state standards. Good. Now, these skills might be one standard. There might be 3 different skills embedded within one standard, but we've broken them down. I'll show you an example of what it's going to look like on our report card, but that just gives you an idea of it is very skill-based, letting teachers, parents, students know exactly what they can do.
Nice.
And then where our CFAs, our common formative assessments that we've implemented this year, are testing these skills. So they are aligned. That's how we're going to know whether a student is a proficient at that skill or not.
And that's through beyond textbooks, the Common Core, or you're not necessarily?
So yes, we have borrowed those assessments from beyond textbooks because they already had assessments that were aligned to the standards.
Okay, great.
So what are the benefits? We kind of go back to some of those key philosophies in the purpose of standards-based report cards. But it sets a clear understanding of learning goals. This is a lot of the work that we've done the last 2 years. We've talked about state standards are normally a sentence, maybe two, with a couple bullet points underneath. That's all the information we get. It doesn't necessarily say, here are all the things a student needs to do in order to be proficient at that standard. That's where we partnered with Beyond Textbooks because they had done that work to develop that success criteria for each standard. What does it take to be proficient in that standard? So we now know we have the end goal, and it's the same end goal for every teacher. Before, with that one sentence, there could have been 5 different interpretations of what that standard meant. Now, we all have a very clear idea of what is the end goal that we're all working towards. Targeted feedback. So we're giving those common formative assessments, those CFAs, to students after we've done instruction with everyone. And then if we're doing some reteach opportunities, we're giving that to them again to track how they're doing and really identify within that standard what are the skills that we still need to work on with those students. Instead of saying, oh, we've got the whole standard, we're just going to teach the whole thing over again. What we're seeing is when you really break down the information from those assessments, it might be 1 or 2 little things that could help clear up some misunderstandings for a student. It could be one component that they just need a little bit of extra practice with. So it's, in the end, saving us a lot of time. Instead of just guessing at what they need, we have very targeted information, and we're able to give that to teachers, to students, and to parents about what we can do to help each individual child. This one goes to kind of what you had just talked about, which is greater consistency in grading. We're using those formative assessments. Everyone's giving the same assessment for the same standard and has the same grading expectations. Right now, we are seeing teachers are grading in a variety of ways, giving different assessments based on their understanding of those standards, which again is not their fault. It's the system that we're in, and we just don't have enough guidance from the state. So they're doing what they can, but with the structures we've put in place over the last couple years, we have a lot of consistency within what those standards mean and how we're assessing them. Increased student motivation. Students sometimes sees that they have a D or an F. It's really easy to give up. But if they instead have, okay, here's the skill we're working on next. You got this, we're working on this. It's a ladder for them to continue to work through because they're building on skills. They might not be proficient, but we use the word yet a lot. So you don't have it yet, but we're working on it. Sometimes D's and F's are very discouraging and can cause children to give up, and we do not want that. Differentiated instruction. And this is a piece that we're really working to master and develop this year as educators. Taking that data from those assessments based on where students are and creating intervention opportunities and extension opportunities for those kids who have already mastered content. So really meeting each child where they're at on a regular basis when it comes to the essential standards that we've identified. Standards-based report cards are going to improve that instruction with parents. We can more accurately and confidently tell parents, here's where your student's at, here's what we're working on, here's where we're trying to get them. And to me, this last one is probably the most important shift with all of standards-based instruction and standards-based grading, and it is that shift to a focus on learning. We know that learning happens over time and each child learns at a different pace instead of just a focus on grades. If we're just focusing on grades, what you're going to see from students is compliance. I'm going to do this so that I get this. Instead of, I'm doing this so that I can learn this, so that I can grow and I can do this next and I can do this next. We want our students to have a love of learning, want them to be excited about it, and we want that to be celebrated at the same time. We want to make sure that they're excited about all of these skills that they're developing throughout their time with us. So challenges, not only with standards-based grading, but with standards-based instruction, there are a few. So this first one is just confusion about the system. We are used to doing things within the A to F system that we grew up with that has been around for a long time. I will tell you, we are kind of behind the pendulum swing when it comes to standards-based report cards. There's a lot of districts who've been doing this for a decade. So there's places that have shifted. But sometimes it can be hard to grasp. We've spent 2 years of laying groundwork with our teachers and our instructional staff to get them ready, and now our focus is on how are we going to help teachers prepare parents and families for this shift. It's not something that we are ignoring. We want to make sure that parents are confident when they read a standards-based report card and they can go, okay, I know what my kid's learning, I know where they're at, I know where they're going, I know how to help them get there. So really building that team with our families. Difficulty in consistent application. Again, this is something that we've spent 2 years laying groundwork on in the district of training our teachers, bringing in formative assessments from beyond textbooks, bringing in unwrapped documents which give us clear outlines of what a standard means. Those are the pieces that we've had to put in place before we were ready to move forward with standards-based report cards. And then again, impact on students. What does this mean for them? Again, they're really familiar with the grading practices that they have now. If I turn in all my work, I've got a good chance of getting a good grade. Really flipping that and the mindset around not just doing work for grades, but doing work to learn and to reap the benefits of that. So you have an example in front of you of the standards-based report card template that we've created for K-8, but then I also created a sample one for you to look at so we could talk through what do each of these components mean. So what we have here is this is what most of our report cards K-8 will look like next year. We've got all of our student identifier information. We will have school information. Here you will see days present, days absent, how many tardies do children have. Again, that's a really good indicator for families and for teachers of maybe they need some intervention around coming to school. Is that a barrier to them learning? We want to make sure that that's at the forefront. Then here you have the key. This is really how the grades are to be interpreted, and it's the exact same language that we used in the bicycle piece. So a 4 means highly proficient. They're working above grade level standard. A 3 is proficient. A 2, they're partially proficient, so they've got some skills, they're just not quite at that grade level yet. They've got some gaps. And then minimally proficient, they're lacking quite a few skills. They don't have the skills necessary to be on grade level. And then what you'll see is some students will have separate report. That will be primarily special education students who maybe are not working on grade level, but they've got IEP goals that are based a little bit different than our grade level expectations. And then this last one means not assessed at this time, and we'll go through an example of that on this next slide here. Other components that we wanted to really be clear with parents are support services. We want to make sure that a parent knows if a student's in reading intervention, we want them to know that that's happening. If they have a 504 or an IEP or they're in ELL, we want to make sure that that's communicated and that's clearly somewhere where both parents and teachers can access that information and ask questions if they have any questions. However, we also know that a part of kind of what we want to report on is not just progress towards standards, but some of the study skills and the essential qualities that are really needed to be a good student. And so we came up with school-wide, and really these are district-wide core values that we want to see in each of our students that we know are going to help them be successful and good community members within our school. So we are reporting to parents on how's your child doing here. So if they, for instance, maybe are not as productive in class, they're not using their time wisely, we want to make sure that parents know that so that they can support at home and we can support at school. So this is page 1. Page 2 is where we get into individual standards. So here you can see examples for ELA and math. I will tell you on our actual report card, it will be longer than this. You will see all of the standards for the year on here. But when you see here, in quarter 1, these were standards that were taught in quarter 1. These 3 standards were not taught yet. Those are coming up later in the year. Then you can see quarter 2, they introduced a new standard, and then by quarter 3, they had taught all of those standards. So a 2 means they're not quite at grade level, they're partially proficient, they have a lot of skills, they're moving towards grade level, but they're not there quite yet. And again, these can change over time. If they earned a 2 in first quarter, it doesn't mean that's where they're at forever. Again, learning is a progression, and it's progress at different times for each kid. So teachers will be able to change that grade for a standard if they are seeing that a student has mastered that.
So Kelsey, is that
Yes.
determined by the formative assessments that's going on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so we'll start with the formative assessments. However, after like first quarter for these standards, we do have some additional ways that that can be assessed. So we do have some online learning platforms that do practice. Teachers will be able to see, have they mastered it here, not just on that formative assessment? Are they providing or demonstrating proficiency in different ways? And then they'll be able to change that based on some additional data points later.
And so I'm assuming that for each of these standards, proficiency is defined somehow. Like,
Yes.
it's not just up to the teacher saying, you got 70% on this assessment or 80% on this assessment. And there's a definition of what this means so that it's standardized across the board.
Yes, that's where those unwrapped documents from our partnership with BT has come in. They provide what that looks for. Then with our formative assessments, every formative assessment is 5 questions. So we have defined as a district, and this is based off of Vail's experience, if you get 5 out of 5, you're highly proficient. So you are performing above grade level. If you get a 4 out of 5, which is an 80%, you're at grade level. So you're 3, and then we've scaffolded it down from there. So we are using that to help create these final grades on the report card as well. Yeah, great question. So this is just a mini version of what you will see on the real report card, just to give you an idea of what that looks like. When we do have our full report cards completed, example, the standards you see under ELA or math, those are not all of our state standards. There's no way we can test for proficiency on every single one of our state standards throughout the year. So we have decided to narrow that down to what are the most essential that are needed for that grade level and for the grade level beyond, and that's where you see these. You're still going to see 20 to 25 standards in each of these categories. It's not that we're not teaching the rest of them. They are just supporting standards that help support the standards that we have identified as essential standards. And then 2 additional pieces that you will see on report cards are specials for K4. So that's art, music, and PE. We'll have grades for our K4 students. For 5th through 8th grade, our elective teachers have also identified essential standards, and they'll be reporting on those. Those are not built yet because we're working on embedding all of this into PowerSchool, and there's some formatting things that we're working through. And then the last piece you will see are comments. We want teachers to be able to communicate any additional information that's going to help parents understand where their students are at. And then next steps. So we have our template completed, as you can see. We are working to update essential standards that are being taught in each grade and each subject. We did initial work this year to identify those essential standards. But we came into this year as this is a learning year. We might have to make some small adjustments. Teachers have been talking about that, have been working through that all year. And so at the end of this year, we'll identify, okay, we now know for sure these are the essential standards we want by quarter. So that work is something we will continue to do throughout the end of this semester. We have our IT department building this report card within PowerSchool. We have to build that and customize that just for ourselves. So working through that, making sure that all the information populates correctly. We are creating communication and a training plan for families. We want to make sure that we have enough support that families really understand what this report card means and how they can use that as a tool to help their children. And then additional training opportunities for teachers as we roll out a new report card system. We want to make sure that they're supported every step of the way as well. So we're working on all of those different components at this time. And that's where we're at. Do you have a question?
That's a lot of great information. Brett and I have actually been visiting our schools these last couple of weeks, and this has come up a lot, especially in our elementary school levels. And I have several just quick questions when it comes to grades. When you're looking as a parent at PowerSchool, will parents be able to see how their child is performing on those individual CFAs, or will there be more of a general progression than that? Like, or will it be as specific as how each CFA has gone?
Terrific question. Yes. So in PowerSchool, when you were to click on the grade from that first page that we saw, each individual standard will be there, and you'll be able to see how they've done on those CFAs. So you can see their first CFA, if they took it. If they needed a second time, you can see the second one. So you can see growth and progress within the PowerSchool platform. Yes, we want to make sure that that's transparent. And that's K-8, but even our high school teachers are giving these formative assessments based on standards. You will see them in high school grades when you click on that in PowerSchool as well.
Okay.
Kelsey, great job. Excellent presentation, very informative. Jen asks really good questions, and I ask really basic questions, so I got a couple for you. I kind of feel like I'm coming in partway through. This has been a lot of groundwork, and so where have we seen this effective? You mentioned Vail School District. I've heard that come up a couple times. Is there other school districts that have used this effectively? And is there some school districts that have tried this and haven't been successful? I know you guys do your homework. I'm just kind of wondering what the backstory is on some of this.
Yes, so standards-based instruction and standards-based grading has been around for about 15 years.
Okay.
In some places, probably even longer. The largest push was in the early to mid-2000s. Vail is a district who's doing this incredibly well, and that's why we partnered with them. They spent years building their instructional resources around grade level proficiency on standards. That's something that the state doesn't provide to us, so they created it. We were actually in the process of starting that, and then we came across BT and went, okay, if we partner with them, it's going to save us 3 to 5 years, and we can jump to where we are now. So Vail is one, and they're one of the top performing districts in the entire state. So what their system and what they're doing is working with students. Right now, more of the bigger schools are doing this than not. They're implementing standards-based report cards. Flagstaff has them, Deer Valley has them, I think Cave Creek. So some of the really large districts have already implemented this. Humboldt implemented standards-based report cards, I want to say 3 years ago. But again, they spent years working up and building to implementing.
And
so
most of those school districts have seen positive outcomes from this procedure?
Yes, most schools do. Where you see some school districts not as effective is when they don't spend enough time training families on what this means. Okay. If you were to give a report card to a family who's never seen a standards-based report card, it can be really overwhelming and frustrating. We don't want any of our families to feel that way. We want to make sure that they have all of the knowledge needed so that they can understand what's on those report cards, and they really have some actionable items of how they can help their child.
And I notice there's a mechanism for the teachers to respond to parents or comments. Is there a mechanism in place that the families can answer the questions back to the teachers, or?
So we have lots of communication ways for families to get in touch with teachers. At the elementary, we use everything from Blackboard, which is our communication system. They're really great at collecting email. There's a program called Class Dojo that allows them to connect through an app. Okay. At our high school, we're seeing some similar things. There's a program called Remind where they can text back and forth without personal information. It's all through the app. So we have quite a few ways that families can connect with teachers all throughout. The one other area I do want to stress that we've seen standards-based report cards be effective is we implemented standards-based report cards in kindergarten about 8 or 9 years ago. I think 2016. So it was my first year when I was principal at Taylor Hicks. And that has gone really well. Being an elementary principal, we didn't have families who didn't understand that this is what they knew, but our teachers did a really great job of talking parents through that. So we talked about them at back to school night, parent-teacher conferences, and then all throughout. So it was really successful, and it's been really successful in our kindergarten.
And my last comment is I love the increased motivation. I love the focus on learning to learn, not learning to get a grade. And I went to school for a lot of years, and I was learning to get a grade a lot of times. And it's been later in life where I've said I want to learn this material because I love it.
Right.
And so I'm excited about that prospect.
Me too.
So thank you.
One question I have is, will PowerSchool work with this for our students and families? Okay.
Yes.
So we won't
So
have to
the
change
assessment platform that we have where students are taking those formative assessments, it's partnered with PowerSchool.
Okay.
It feeds directly in. So those grades are automatically imported into the grade book. So teachers can see them there, parents can see them there.
Okay.
And then our report cards are built within PowerSchool and printed out through there. So they talk very nicely to each
Okay,
other.
so we don't have to change that platform?
No.
Yep, there'll be work on the back end to develop this.
Yes.
But there are
Yeah,
lots of
sure.
districts, including Humboldt, that
Okay.
does just this.
Correct.
So Kelsey, what would a teacher's grade book look like? So you have homework, you have assignments, you have the formative assessments. Walk me through kind of what all that encompasses, and then what does it spit out in the end? And then how does that tie into a GPA? You know, because obviously Max and Kaylee and Vanessa are looking like that really transitions obviously as they're trying to go
Yeah.
through a school.
So the GPA is probably the primary reason we're not doing standards-based report cards at the high school level. Because for the system that they're in and for colleges and all of that, they still need those traditional grades. We're going to be working on embedding some standards-based grading within there, which is you'll see an assignment or an assessment in their grade book aligned to a standard, so we can track progress that way. Grade books will look different from K4 to 5-8. So in kindergarten through 4th grade, primarily what you're going to see are the common formative assessments or benchmark assessments. So you'll see progress towards that. The days of just doing completion grades, oh, you turned this in, I'm going to give you a grade for that. You will not see that as much K4. There might be a few things just for tracking purposes that teachers do, but it won't necessarily translate to a grade. Most of just the grades that will come out will be based off of the skills in the standards. When you get to 5th through 8th grade, they will have a few more of those things because they are doing practice assignments, they are doing additional components. That will feed into, those citizenship core value grades that you see on productivity. So if they're not turning in work, it'll be based off of that from the grade book. Does that help answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
So then what are we going to do next steps just for getting assessments and then also getting them prepared to take the state exam at, above 9th grade? What are we looking at?
So that's why we're doing all of the common formative assessments aligned to standards. So they're doing all of this same work.
Right.
They're just not translating that to a report card at the end, which is what K8 is doing.
So my question is, do parents get that feedback on 9? They will?
They will, because it'll be within their grade book. They'll be able to see, here's the standard, here's how they've done on that standard, on that, whether it's the formative assessment or the benchmark. We're also working to better align classroom assignments and activities to each standard. So there's a way in PowerSchool that we can say, okay, here's practice for this standard. I can tag it as this standard, so a parent can go in and see all of the work for one standard. You're able to sort it and go, okay, I know how they're doing on this particular standard for this quarter.
Carly, Vanessa, what do you think? Did I call you Kaylee earlier?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah. Carly.
Only my 7th time here. But. And look, Miss Torres got us these nice
I'll do better.
name tags for nothing.
Right.
It's hard to see from here.
I know, I moved it just in case you needed the help.
Thank you, that helps.
Spicy.
That's
I think it's a great idea. I was just talking with a teacher at Prescott High School today about a big problem that we see with like grades. You just submit a grade or an assignment for a grade. And I think if this works, it'll like really work. Like I think that it could really change the way students perceive school, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think for me, I feel like the biggest part about this, like the biggest, I guess, benefit from this would be a big boost in confidence. I feel like me and my 2 younger brothers and my older brother that already graduated, a lot of the times we base ourselves off of letter grades, and especially my mom when my brothers get report cards and things, she's always kind of asking me like, oh, well, what does this mean? Or like, what are they learning? And I'm kind of just like, Mom, like, I don't really know. But I think with this, I feel like even for myself, I think I have better chance at explaining things to her, and I think, especially for my younger brothers, they have a boost in confidence.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No more going to Disneyland for straight A's.
That's right, buddy.
No, never.
I know.
Well, we don't know. We don't know.
Not yet, right?
Never tested that there.
Yeah.
Any other questions for?
I do have one more. I was wondering if what kind of impact will this have for students who are not achieving by the end of the school year? You know, I think in the past we've had some struggles with knowing when it's appropriate to have a child repeat a grade or when it's appropriate for intervention, more serious intervention for a student moving forward. And it feels like we'll have a much more clear perspective of where a child is and whether or not they're really ready to go to the next grade level.
Yes. One of the benefits from standards-based grading and instruction is that we know exactly where they're at on grade level expectations. How far below are they? Are they at grade level? Are they above? So the ability to intervene much sooner on very specific areas of learning can happen faster from what you're seeing. It's not as subjective of like, well, I think they're low in reading, so we're going to address these things because I think this is what they need. We have data to show they've got this or they don't have this, so it helps us narrow that focus and intervene immediately, which is why this year we spent so much time building in intervention opportunities, because teachers are giving that formative, and the next day, sometimes even the same day, you're seeing them start to add some of those interventions in. Our previous assessment platform, we only gave that 3 times a year, and it was on all of our grade level standards. So it didn't give teachers a lot of really actionable data. They have immediate actionable data in their hands. So they're assessing students every couple of weeks on standards, and they're able to adjust instruction immediately.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I was about to mention, it's not like we've been wandering in the dark without any data to inform how to intervene when students need interventions. But the real key for me is it's more immediately available and actionable than it has been in the past. I think it'll help us take great strides toward helping students progress.
Yep.
Well said.
All right. Great. Thanks again, Kelsey.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 6. Item 6A, summary of current events. Mr. Tinney.
Yes, sir. Okay, we got a couple of slides here. Thanks for being here. McVickers, thank you so much for being here.
Guys.
Max, thanks, buddy.
Great job, Max.
Take care, Tiffany. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
pretty cool. Good stuff. Lest you think that Max and Vanessa and Carly are the only stellar students at Prescott High School, we got some additional evidence recently that we've got other outstanding kids there. The Flynn Foundation Scholarship is a scholarship many of you may have heard of before. My understanding is up through recently, I don't know if we've got firm data on this, but we were told this once recently from the Flynn folks that there are more Flynn Foundation Scholarship winners from Prescott High School than any other school in the state that's our size. So we're punching well above our weight as far as this is concerned. There's a rigorous process for applying for this and being selected for this. Students have to be stellar in essentially every area. And we had 2 finalists for this, or 2 semifinalists. Thank you. 2 semifinalists for this, and then they're down to the final stage. You can see the data there. Over 200 high schools from across the state. Worked with students to nominate over 1,100 candidates for this, and these are top students to begin with, right? It's not like, you pull a Clark Tenney out and say, oh, maybe this guy will work. Nope, these are kids who are fantastic, and the cream of the crop. From the cream of the crop, 1,100 students statewide, we're down to 35 kids, and one of them is our friend Malia Rasa at Prescott High School. So we want to congratulate her on that, and we're excited to see what the next steps are. My understanding are there's usually about 15 to 20 students who are awarded this scholarship, so she's got an excellent chance at this point. We're really proud of all of our kids who considered this and have the qualifications to have applied in the first place. Kind of a neat honor for her. Next, we had some great things happen sports-wise. You've probably been following our girls soccer team ranked #1 in the state, and our boys basketball team ranked #1 in the state. Many of our other very successful teams at Mile High Middle School. They just participated in the middle school state wrestling championships, and they came out victorious. They were the champions. Particularly 3 students. The entire team participated in one way or another, but particularly there were 3 students who placed especially highly Jeremiah Villanueva was the state champion in his weight class. I won't point out that he weighs just about the same as me, so there's that. Good for him. He's a big boy and wrestled against some other big boys and came out victorious. He would have pinned me in seconds, I have no doubt. Briley Ricketts was second place in her state division, and then Henry Hampton, the fourth, was appropriately fourth place in the state. And their efforts added to the team scoring, and the team came out as the champions of the entire state. Kind of neat. And you can see the various assistant coaches who helped volunteer to make that possible for our kids. We're really proud of them. Cesar Astorga, the last one mentioned there, is he related maybe to Officer Astorga? Yes. Okay, there you go. So, yes. This is our new student resource officer at Granite Mountain Upper Elementary School as part of the coaching staff there. That's great. Brian, will you explain this for us?
Oh, jeez.
Brian wasn't expecting this to be here.
No. If you do your job well, you get this. If you don't, you get fired. So, that's pretty much the summary of it. There's just so many reports that we have to do, and this one just has to do with if you have a bond that's outstanding that you're still paying. There's increased disclosures for transparency that you have to upload and do, and they put it in something called an EMMA system that anybody can go to, and so I got this, and I actually threw it away. So someone in my office took it out. And so obviously they're recognizing for longevity-wise, getting them in on time and having them accurate. And so
Brian's a modest guy, but we get accolades from the Auditor General and from various auditing companies that work with us and from this organization all the time about the excellent work that he does in being transparent and accurate with our financial reporting. As we talk with you about over the coming months, where we're at budgetarily and what we recommend going forward and how we compare to other districts, you will see that we are in very, very good hands with our finances.
And I do know who gave it to Sarah out of my trash, and that will be paid tomorrow. So, I just want to say.
Very good. Yeah.
So thank you for the recognition.
Yep. And then finally, we want to, you bet, thank you, Brian. We really, really appreciate the work you do. That's outstanding. Sorry if that embarrassed you, but
You do that often?
we promise we won't fish other things out of your trash and put them up on the screen here very often, at least. We want to recognize the passing of two icons in Prescott history who've made a lot of impact on our school district and on our city and county. One is Cal Cordes, who was a longtime teacher for us. Cordes Junction, that's his family. And there was an excellent write-up in the paper Sunday. Was it Sunday? Sunday, the obituary. There you go. And then his obituary ran. Was it also Sunday, or did that come out yesterday? I want to say it might have been yesterday. There you go. Anyhow, Cal taught for us for 27 years. Is that what I'm remembering? Something like that. And was a great coach. And then after his career teaching for us, once he retired, he was on campus almost as much as he had been before. You couldn't have a PHS sporting event that this guy wasn't there supporting the students and the coaches and the families. Pretty neat. He will be missed. Another great gentleman who passed recently was Rolly Simmons. Rolly was I think 3-term mayor of Prescott in addition to a county supervisor and also the husband of our former HR director, Krista Simmons. And we note and acknowledge his passing and the great things that he did for our community and are saddened by his passing, and our heart goes out to his family as well. I want to just make note of that. I think that's all I have.
Thanks for putting that in about Cal and Rolly. Very special. Cal was a staple of the community. He said he was sitting in that booth that is aptly named after him. Just all the work that he did with not only baseball, but just within the community. Survived I didn't realize he was 99 years old. Is that where we're at? Yeah. I mean, he just, yeah. Adam, for you.
I'd like to buy some Snickers.
I'm just doing a Cal impersonation. So I did that because he used to always announce at all the basketball games, all the baseball games. And you just knew Cal's voice. And he had a vice grip of a handshake for 99 years. So pretty amazing. And then Rolly, I don't know, Sarah, you're really close with them as well and really tight with Krista, but he didn't know, Rolly didn't have enemies. He was just, everybody was his friend, and, you know, he just shined, always shined, and just a very, very kind heart, and we'll miss him. How about the board members? Start with you, Brett. Update.
In the last month, Jen and I have started our listening tour. So our goal is, you know, lots of people have asked us, what are your goals for school board? And we decided we wanted to listen to see what teachers and staff and students and parents had to say before we created our goals. And so this, Clark's actually set these up for us, and I think he spent a good part of a day getting the calendar ready. So we appreciate that, and it's very much appreciated. And we have had a great time. And usually over the lunch hour, we'll go to a school. We've been to, let's see, we started at Abaya Judd, and then we went to Prescott High School and Taylor Hicks last week, and I think we have 2 more this week. We're going to this campus here, and then Lincoln School. And it has been fantastic. We have, I've learned a lot. I've learned that Jen is well versed in school board and parenting issues, and I have a lot to learn to catch up. So I appreciate her help. I have to ask her for acronym definitions regularly. And then I've also been to many of the Prescott High School basketball games, and enjoy being on campus and meeting people. And I tell you, a couple of times I've had a teacher say, there's no place I'd rather be. I am in my dream job. And that, I think, is speaks a lot to the district, to the administration, and it's great to be a partner with this school district. So.
Thanks, Brett. Jen.
Well, I've been hanging out with Brett at all these schools, and it has been really incredible. I just have to say the staff is amazing. And it's not only our teachers. I would say we have had a lot of paraprofessionals come in and speak to us and share with us their experiences, why they do what they do. Some have so much energy, I can't even believe it. I'm like, wow, you are in the right job. I would say the thing that has stood out to me the most is just the incredible dedication of our SPED departments. They come and they advocate for their students very, very well, from all levels of district level all the way to our parapros that are spending day in and day out walking around with their student. And it has been really impactful. I've been blown away and learned so much about what they're doing. And I think we went to the high school, and we were not, their facilities are very small where they eat lunch, those teachers. So we were in a separate classroom, and it was really amazing how many people came to visit us and talk to us and let us know what they think and how things are going. And again, a lot of people just saying this is the best job they've ever had. So it's been really eye-opening, really positive. Very much a desire to constantly see the district get better. So it wasn't, it could just be a complaining session, and that hasn't been our experience at all. So.
And Jen talked about today, she talked about maybe finding a way that we can record some of our what we've experienced, some positive things that they've said, some negative things, and maybe at our retreat we could get on the agenda and we could present some of that and see what we'd like to maybe
yeah, so we can share with the rest of you what we've learned.
Okay, great. Andy.
I've been working on setting up my regular visits with our special ed director and visiting schools that way. Haven't been doing my usual monthly visits at the high school yet, but I do go up to the high school once a week for other things, and I get to meet with students individually and as a group up there. I just want to echo what Brett and Jen are saying. You know, every teacher I interact with, every staff person I interact with is polite and friendly and does their best to make sure you feel comfortable and have what you need to do the work that you're there to do. So, can't speak highly enough about what our staff is doing. And I know that's the same at all the schools. I've just focused on the high school. One thing I do want to point out, I did try to go to a basketball game that was advertised for a home game on MLK Day, and it turns out it was at a showcase event down in Phoenix, but Prescott was the home team. So I showed up at the high school, and it was about 30 degrees outside. They said, "You can stay and watch the soccer game," and I'm like, "I'm not dressed for soccer outdoors." So I didn't get to see them play. I haven't been able to get to many events up there this spring yet, which I'm sorry I missed, but looking forward to maybe getting to some more. I'll be attending the Board Operations Leadership Training Seminar in Flagstaff on Friday this week. And I think that's it.
Great. Just a couple of events for Lincoln. We've got the Family Dance and Auction, which is a big fundraiser for the school, hosted by the PTA, and that's this Thursday.
We're not auctioning families, to be clear.
Oh, this is true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope, yeah.
It sounds like it might be the case.
Sorry, yeah. And then Reading and Feeding is a month-long reading program at Lincoln, and they're going to be reading. The goal is 100,000 minutes for the month, and there's also a feeding component of this, and so it's all an effort to develop great citizens. Great basketball games, great soccer games. Just left the soccer game with it was senior night for the girls, so can't believe we're at senior night already, and that we're well past the middle of the year. And then Brett didn't say it, but at one of the basketball games, Abaya Judd sang for the national anthem. His son sang in there, and yeah, his pipes were very loud, and but we actually sang 2 national anthems that game, so it was a little confusing.
Very patriotic.
But we were very patriotic that. But I am always amazed at the patriotism and reverence of all of our students anytime we play the national anthem, and it's just a hush across the crowd, and everybody acts appropriately. And then I think that's all I have for that. Carly, you're next.
Oh, good. I went to the regional Yavapai County Spelling Bee.
Yeah.
It was very impressive. I never made it that far, for a good reason. Like, I had literally never heard of half of those words. I was like, and like neither had the women, like the professors presenting it. They were like, "What does that mean?" And they didn't know either. And everyone spelled it right, and that was the craziest part. So that was just really good to get to interact with. It was like all of Yavapai County, and Abaya Judd sent home like little flowers with us, and it's just really nice. National Honor Society. I love my club. We're doing a toiletries drive right now. We're partnered with Stepping Stones Youth. We also have our talent show on the 26th of this month at the high school, and we are introducing it to the entire district. This is the first time we've opened it up to the community and the entire district, and not just PHS students. So we're hopeful that we will get a younger generation involved. On this Thursday, Mock Trial has a scrimmage at the juvie in that courtroom. And it's just a really good opportunity because our actual competition is at the courthouse. But the judge there is so nice, and she's so like critical in a way that lots of students need before a competition. So it's a really good opportunity for them, and obviously it's a good opportunity for anyone to just get to stand up there in an actual courtroom in front of an actual judge and discuss a case. And next Thursday is JROTC's military ball, which they put on every year. I'll be going, this is my 3rd year, and they have a very big ceremony, and it's just really great for their club. It brings them together a lot, and it just gives you some awareness of the procedures they do and things like that. That's all.
Great.
All right. So, yesterday, Abaya Judd began their Super Bowl drive. They're collecting any non-perishable food items. So, if any of you want to go donate to support any of the two teams. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it the Chiefs and the Eagles? Yes. I'm not a big fan, but you know, my four.
Well, it's always the Chiefs.
males-
It's a Taylor Swift.
And then our MIC TED, we're having a campus tour on March 12th. Like Ms. Bailey mentioned, like how we've been mentioning these past couple meetings, MIC TED offers 1 to 2 year programs for classes sophomores through seniors. We have, I think, 3 campuses, and students are able to go tour them and kind of just get a feel of what classes they could be taking next year. And then January 15th, Interact Club had a welcoming party to 3 of our foreign exchange students. They are from Germany and Vietnam. They were able to kind of just learn about programs and extracurriculars that are not offered at schools in their home country. So I think that's a very nice thing that PHS has to offer. And then, like we've been mentioning, sports on the 30th, our boys and girls had their basketball game against Bradshaw. I'm pretty sure both of them won.
Oh, yeah.
Now they're standing, the boys are standing at a 9-1, a 9-1 record, and then the girls are at a 9-2. And then our ladies of S Club, we've been making some Valentine's Day purses for our homeless ladies at the for the soup kitchen. So these purses, we've filled them up with a bunch of different toiletries, you know, necessities, basic necessities that our women may need and won't have or not always have resources to. And I would just like to echo off of what our board members were saying. For our special education programs, I do want to say thank you all very much for everything you guys do. My youngest brother, he's 10. He's at a BEDH. He has Down syndrome, and so he's been at Discovery Gardens, a BEDH, and Taylor Hicks, and the progress he has made is amazing. Every day he gets off the bus, he has a huge smile on his face, unless he was sleeping in the bus on his way home. But other than that, he is always super excited, super motivated in the early mornings when he has to go to school, and he's just learned a lot of stuff, and I do want to say thank you all for that.
Awesome.
Great. Thanks, Vanessa.
He's a great young man. Neat to see him when I go over there.
All right. Item 6B, community comments shared with the governing board. Anybody have any?
Just a lot of comments about our upcoming
Item. That's
item.
great. The one thing that we received a comment from Judge Carmen. Is that who's working with you at mock trial? Or?
She is actually not one of our judges, but she's doing the program at Prescott High School that does the like social media awareness. But she's not one of our mock trial coaches. But she works like pretty closely with Miss Lee, who's the law teacher and our mock trial advisor. But she's doing this like really big, really wonderful program about like awareness to the students at PHS right now about like social media and things like that.
Yeah, we just received tremendous feedback from her just about the professionalism of our kids and just how they treat their basically heads and tails above even some of the other schools that they kind of see. And I think as a testament to the kids themselves, obviously, and the group that we have, but it was very gracious of her to at least take the time and write a letter to all of us about that. So,
Yeah, it was super neat.
recognize
She
it.
just mentioned that of all the schools she goes to, that she finds our PHS students to be the most engaged and responsive, and that's pretty neat feedback. She gets to a lot of places and has some good perspective that way. And what a great program, that one judge, one school piece that Carly was referring to, where there are judges that might meet these students under other circumstances if things go sideways in their future, and they get with them early and they say, hey, here's some decisions you might want to think about. You may not have thought about, if you do this could go wrong quickly, so really think twice. And we know it's been impactful for our students as well. It's part of our freshman academy course where she and another judge come in and present.
That's great. Thank you. All right, next item is item 7A, consent agenda. Are there any items anybody would like to highlight or pull? Any questions? Jane normally has been reading lately the donations and gifts, so I'll be highlighting item 7A2. We had a donation from Yavapai Title for $500 to the PHS Choir, a donation from Prescott Lakes Pickleball Club, $200 to the PHS Choir, a donation from GBU Life, $100 to put wherever we need it most, a donation from Signal Hill Petroleum, $54.52 for PHS Athletics, a donation from Brad Bergamini, PLLC, a donation in the amount of $1,250 to PHS Athletics. Thanks, Brad and Jen. A donation from Andrea Kelly, $25 to Lincoln Elementary. A donation from Bonnie and Tom Devereaux, $2,000 to the PHS Challenge Club. A donation from Prescott Sunrise Lions Foundation, a check for $22,000 or $22.75. You know, Jen, you're probably better at that. $2,275 to Discovery Gardens. And then there's several donations that we recognize Les Fenderson, Mr. Fenderson, to all of us last month. But in memory of Les Fenderson, there were several donations. One from Nancy Rowley for $50 to PHS Athletics, Barbara Rowley for $50 to PHS Athletics, and then Dr. George and Judy Sarah, $100 to PHS Athletics. All in memory of Mr. Fenderson. That's it. Moving on to item 7B.
We need to approve.
Oh,
Sorry,
yeah, thank you. I do that a lot. I will consider a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Okay, now moving on to item 7B, study and voting session. Do we have any calls of the public? Two? Okay.
Do you want them in the order that we received?
Okay, 1 and 2. Okay. I just want to read this before we start the public comment. Thank you for showing interest in the public process. Our governing board is interested in hearing from all who want to speak. We are also determined to maintain appropriate decorum. Please be sure that your comments are respectful and constructive, are specific to the voting item for which we have signed up to speak. If a speaker strays off topic for too long, they'll be asked to conclude their remarks. We want every person who is interested in speaking to be treated with respect and to have their full time to speak. So speakers will be called to the podium. This will occur in the order of voting items, in the order that individuals request to speak to each item. As your turn to speak approaches, please move to be near the podium to ensure smooth transitions. If speakers are not ready when called, they may be moved back in order. That shouldn't be difficult with the two. We plan to give every speaker up to 3 minutes. If you're still speaking at 3 minutes, you'll be asked to finish, but we also reserve the right to listen more if we'd like to. Okay, so brief, polite applause after a speaker is fine. If you're so inclined, no shouting, please. While a person is at the podium, please no comments or other intentional noise such as cheering or booing from the audience during their comments. If public decorum is not maintained, we will recess the meeting until order can be restored. Per open meeting laws, board members are not allowed to respond to public comment except to clarify misinformation if necessary. All right, so our first person is Andy Nelson. Andy?
Good evening, District Administration and governing board members. Thank you for your service. I am here as an individual, not coordinated with any other, and my comments in emails that predate this evening are well known. In those emails, I received answers regarding the current public policy policy regarding public comment that in effect stated, this is the way we do things, and it's served the board well, and we have no cause to change. I feel as though this opportunity is similar to a solar eclipse, when the sun and the moon have aligned to actually make public comment about public comment. The study and voting agenda, BEDB, reads, community comments shared with board members. Board members may briefly summarize the comment or concern shared with them by the community member. Board members may not read or present lengthy prepared statements or letters from community members. Why the heck not? One board member explained to me that board members would mention community comments if they felt it was appropriate. And I would add, if they remember to do so. This is a very subjective and conditional criteria. The public comment must then be summarized and repackaged by a board member in their own words to make it brief. What is wrong with a letter being read for its proper context, and what is lengthy? My letter that was read in December's meeting was timed to be read by myself in 3 minutes, but I was not allowed, and I understand why. No instruction was given for how that letter was to be read by the board member, in full or in part, or even if it was to be anonymous or not, and I make no apologies for asking it to be read. Now, adoption of 7.B.3 would stifle public comment even further. I ask for a no adoption vote. Next, BEDH, any individual desiring to address the board about a topic that is agendized on the study and voting section of the agenda. Can you give me one example of a public concern that was communicated to board members and then mentioned during a public comment section of the agenda and then actually made it through the gauntlet to become a study and voting agenda item? I can't, and this is the very reason I am concerned that our voice is being stifled because of a prohibitive process. Even if a public comment were to be mentioned and someday were to make it to the study and voting agenda, they would have to vigilantly check the agenda each month to see, month after month, wondering if their concerns would actually be addressed. Then, they would have to sift through the agenda to identify exactly what is being studied and voted on. The language is cloaked in legal jargon that no one would be able to decipher unless they were extremely informed. Here it is again, 7.B.3. Consider adopting the proposed changes to ASBA policies BEDB and BEDH. That's all it says. I don't think anybody understands what that means. I ask for a no vote on adoption of both these policies. Is the district who writes these agendas trying to make it hard for the public to understand and participate? Stricken from the record, stricken from the former policy, if this were to be adopted, are the words, open call for public comment. Do you want to build trust and transparency? Make open public comment more available. What is the district afraid of? Thank you.
Ms. Anne Marie DiCarlo.
Thank you. I appreciate the chance to be here tonight. I'm going to read because I can be succinct. So, my name again is Anne Marie DiCarlo, and I am going to start by saying my understanding of the open public comment here in this district is that unless an issue of concern has been placed on the voting agenda, just what the gentleman had explained, public comment is restricted only to such items. This differs from other school districts. Both Dewey-Humboldt and Chino Valley provide for public comment that's very open. They allow 3 minutes per speaker up to a total of 30 minutes on any issue. Doesn't have to be on the voting agenda. It's kind of like that listening session. You go to the schools to listen to what they have to say. This is the public's way of coming to you, and it's easy. They don't have to sift through material, agendas, definitions. They can just talk and tell you what they think. Under your current guidelines, public concerns must be made known through private communication with one or more board members by phone or email. From what I understand, at least a few board members must think the concern is relevant or important enough for it to be brought forth as an agenda item. Only once a concern comes as an agenda item, then the public can comment. In essence, this methodology is a form of censorship. A true open comment forum would allow any taxpayer to address the entire board with a time limit, of course, to be respectful, on any matter of concern in front of other members of the public in attendance on any issue of concern, not necessarily those on the voting agenda or those that have been screened ahead of time. I would think the board would welcome this opportunity from the community. Frankly, this would not disrupt your meetings or other important items on your agenda. And at most, it would just extend maybe the board meeting by a small amount of time. In return, you and the other members of the public would have the opportunity to know what's on the mind of the community, even if the concerns voiced are criticisms of the current policies or whatever the case may be. The current method of bringing concerns to the board creates a lack of transparency and does not adequately give the public the optic that you are hearing and listening to all concerns. Probably most importantly, public comment uncensored at the monthly board meeting is vital because it allows other members of the community to hear the concerns of other taxpayers, something they're not going to get to do if it's going through an email and then through a sifting process. And that would make them aware of any other concerns that other taxpayers may have. I just want to take 1 second to harken back to the COVID pandemic to illustrate the importance of what I'm advocating for. Many school board members, I was in Pennsylvania at the time, did not live in Arizona, who were absolutely well-intentioned, thought they were adhering to the science with the masking and social distancing rules. Many parents strongly disagreed, but were made to comply. Had they not had the freedom to speak at board meetings, important information about the dangers of masking and the mental health issues brought on by social isolation policies would never have been heard by the school board members or other members of the community. We should always provide for a free and open forum to help you serve this community in the best way possible. Thank you for your time and consideration. Thank you.
So item 7B1, consider approving an out-of-state travel request for PHS Challenge Club students, PUSD staff members, and volunteers to travel to the San Juan River in Utah from June 8th through the 14th, 2025. Mr. Dealey.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. I, of course, have the privilege of representing our amazing Challenge Club. So if you guys don't know much about that, it's quite the program with outdoor adventure, but outdoor learning opportunities, and I think they've done a great job. This is the 4th year that they're asking to go on this San Juan River trip. I think the key details for you is that it's going to be 18 students unless they can get the permit up to 25, and not 18 students, 18 total people. Their usual is about a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 ratio when it comes to having some kind of chaperone to students on this trip. So those are the big pieces that I think they've done great with it. It's been a great learning experience for them, and they get to experience the full river rafting that they can.
Any questions?
What's your recommendation?
Oh, well, as you can see, I love the idea. No, I really do. I think this is a special program, and every year these kids come back talking about this trip as being something that they just will remember for the rest of their lives. So I don't think that I can imagine better response than that from kids who experience this.
Adam, would this be the 3rd time that the Challenge Club has taken this specific trip? Is that
The
remember?
4th. I had to double check with Mr. Dean, who, yes, is supervising soccer. Otherwise, he would be here to give you all the ins and outs of this.
Is this a different timeline than it was previous years? I don't remember it happening in June, I guess.
Yeah, I believe that they pushed it back into the summer. I'm not sure why. It probably was related to permit availability.
Okay. I think it adds a concern of heat in that canyon. So I'm sure they'll factor that in, but it's a much more hot time of year at that time. So.
You know, I feel confident that we've got some experienced people on this trip who would be able to deal with whatever issues come up. But I would happily voice those concerns to the team too.
And Mr. Dean is leading it, is that right?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
And I would like to voice my confidence in Mr. Dean. I was interested in this program for a little bit, and he is so passionate about this. I would have never guessed. And then one day I talked to him, he loves the outdoors, and he just and he has a daughter as well, so he understands the concerns of like a parent perspective as well. And I would just voice my confidence in him and his ability to lead this team. I would trust him to lead me through like the Amazon jungle.
That's a pretty good recommendation.
Yeah, it is.
I know. Carly, I'm going to quote you on that. That was really good. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Carly. I will consider a motion to approve an out-of-state travel request for the PHS Challenge Club students, PUSD staff members, and volunteers to travel to the San Juan River in Utah from June 8th to the 14th, 2025.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Another great year.
Thank you so much.
All right. Item 7B2, consider adopting the proposed changes to ASBA Policy Advisory 808, Volume 36. Great. All right. Okay. 36, number 6 from November 2024. Mr. Binder.
Yeah, thank you. So this is a policy, or actually a regulation revision around a specific deadline and some details of what is required in an IEP. Just a little background, all IEPs, all students with an IEP, one of the crucial pieces of that, especially at the high school level, is to have a plan and deadlines in there about their progression towards graduation. It's something that the teacher, the student, and the parents all work together on to make sure that everyone's on the same page working towards that graduation. This regulation just simply ensures that plan is in place by the end of their 9th grade year. I can tell you as principal of Mile High, this was a common discussion and a component of the IEPs at the middle school level. So this is nothing new for our district, and certainly is not going to make a whole lot of, we're not going to need to make a whole lot of changes because, like I said, it's already in place. But just making sure that is in the regulation and we're aligned with state regulations. Any questions on that?
On this one.
We often have new state regulations that require us to at least consider changing our board policy that matches with procedure we've had in place for a long time. This is a good example of that. Sorry, I flipped it over. Yeah. Here. Yeah. I got the front.
This is a huge advisory that was put out. Do we know the specific pages? I mean, I had it last time.
It's near the end. All of them are underlined, and they're all
My
having
computer
to do with
logged
the
off. I'll tell
graduation
you in
date.
just a second here.
Yeah, it has to do
But
with
it's
graduation.
quite a ways down the very long document.
Right.
It logged off.
And I know we discussed this at the last meeting. I just wanted to pull it up on my computer just to review.
That's
Okay,
page
thank
33.
you.
Yep.
Anybody have any concerns over the 30-day period? No.
I actually talked to some of the teachers at the high school regarding it, and they indicated that we have been practicing this for a very long time, and they actually have almost always instituted graduation goals and graduation dates with their students through their IEPs as part of their goal-setting process, is what it sounded like to me.
Absolutely.
I'm just ballparking, but I'd say maybe 2 out of 3 times there's a new law that triggers policy advisory from any of the policy subscription services. Says, hey, you need to write this in your policy. It's something we're already doing.
All right. No further discussion. I'll take a motion to consider adopt the proposed changes in ASBA Policy Advisory 808, Volume 36, Number 6 from November 2024.
So moved.
Motion and a second.
Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Item 7B3, consider adopting the proposed changes to ASB policies BEDB and BEDH. Mr. Binder.
All right, thank you. So 2 different policies here, but obviously somewhat related. The first one, BEDB. Just a little clarification, we actually revised this policy relating to the format of the board agenda last summer. And we worked with our district attorney, we worked with the county superintendent, make sure we understood all the different components. The community comments section was included, and the most recent addition is to basically provide additional clarification on what that section of the agenda should include. And so that's BEDB. Do you have any questions on that before I move on to BEDH, or do you want me to explain them both and then we can?
Questions? Are we taking these as separate votes or as one vote?
There's one agenda item. If you prefer to table one of them or change one of them or whatnot, you certainly can separate them out prior to a vote, but they're being presented as one agenda item.
Let's start with the discussion on BEDB first, and then we'll decide.
Just as history, I think we instituted this in our agenda in 2022 as a response, because we had this discussion
community comments piece
on an open call to the public, and it was determined at that point by the board that the open call, while there are benefits to it, it also presents the opportunity for we could have every month, we could have someone preaching to us. We could have someone presenting information that, tells us that all school buses should be painted green. Things that are not relevant to the work that we do. So the community comments section was added at request of board members to allow for the board members to present information they've received from the community in a board meeting. It is not meant as a filter. It is not meant as anything other than an opportunity for those types of things to be brought forward. And that's the purpose of the community comments section. If board members are not bringing comments forward, then I assume they're not receiving comments from the community.
Or they're not doing a good job at bringing them to the meeting.
Right.
So Andy, can you read exactly what we're adding on this one? It's that blue type in mind.
Yeah, so this is BEDB section F2, community comments shared with board members. And the addition would be, or the proposal would be, board members may briefly summarize the comment or concern shared with them by the community member. Board members may not read or present lengthy prepared statements or letters from community members.
Yeah. So the verbiage on this is briefly summarize is what we're looking at, right?
Yeah.
That's the big change.
I agree with this in theory because it's not agendized. We shouldn't be bringing, it's a violation of the open meeting laws if we come with topics and agenda and we carry them out and they're not brief. It is a little ambiguous to me though that what constitutes brief and what constitutes lengthy. I don't know if, I don't know if we need to dial that in a little bit more, but I think the concept is good.
Yeah.
And in line with open meeting laws.
Yeah. Is there something you'd like to see instead of?
I don't know. It's a good question. I come up without a solution. I think we probably can deal with that, and we be respectful. But I'm okay with the way it's written.
Okay. What do you think, Jen?
I would like to see us have potentially a way that our public can comment easier, maybe than emails or phone calls or, the more personal touches. I think even the emails, like we were able to receive from Andy these upcoming into this event, it kind of creates an open meeting struggle in and of itself because all 5 of us are placed on a single email. All 5 of us cannot communicate on an email. So then we each have to respond individually, and then it's responded again to all of us in an email. And so it just creates a bit of a open meeting conundrum because then we might be hearing each other's opinions without us intending to hear one another's opinions outside of the boardroom. So I was trying to brainstorm some ideas as to how we could make sure we are collecting that information, that for sure the giver of said information is being informed as to the status of their question, as to the status of whether or not it's being considered for an agenda item, whether or not it's been heard and received by all board members. The thing I do in practice in my own business is using things like Google Forms or something of that nature where they're given a receipt, it is automatically sent, never determined by the superintendent whether or not to send it on to the school board, but that the school board can be added to every single Google Form receipt. Does that make sense? Like if you don't know what Google Forms does, when you respond, it sends to whomever you have set it to go to. And that can't just be willy-nilly changed by the topic that is brought forth. So everyone would receive it. We would all have the contact information of the person if we wish to gain more clarity, if we want to go to the superintendent and say, I would like to see this on the agenda. We can talk to Stan in the same way, letting him know that we want to see it on the agenda. Obviously, if more than one of us says that, then automatically we're going to see that on the agenda. But it would allow for us to have some real clarity around what the public is wanting without necessarily having to take public meeting time to potentially, I mean, sometimes it's going to be great. Like tonight's, I love hearing from both of you. Super well prepared. Sometimes when you have an open meeting, I've sat in many a meeting over the years, and sometimes those public comments have nothing to do with anything at hand, nothing to do with something we can even do anything about. And I think it can cause some frustration because we're all going to sit and stare at that person and say nothing because we're not allowed to say anything on a non-agendized item. So this would allow us to make sure we are responding to, that someone's being heard, and that there's some sort of process in place for them to hear where they are at in the chain, you know, that this is where it is and this is what's being considered. I do think it's incredibly important that the public feel heard. That is hugely important. I feel that very strongly. I'm not sure that the accomplishment of getting things on the agenda, or even maybe the public being heard, will feel any different in an open call than in the way that it's being held right now. But I would prefer to see us, I mean, of course, there's still those same ways to communicate. We can't tell people you can't email us, but I just know for me, I even messaged Clark and I'm like, I don't really know how to like handle the fact that I keep seeing the same responses from all these board members. You know, like I want to make sure we're following procedure and all of those things. So that would be that's just my initial like thought, is perhaps making sure we're providing a clearer way for both directions of communication, and that the person who is submitting the request or submitting the concern is either then invited to come speak to the board, or we are at least able to gain the clarity around whether or not we need to make that an agenda item now or in the future.
I think logistically that's potentially very doable. The concept, I think, is an excellent one. It's one that I've not thought of before. I don't think it's been brought up before, but if I'm hearing you correctly, just to clarify, maybe have a Google form link on the website. If you want to communicate the very same thing to all 5 board members, please fill out this form. And then, as you suggest, that could automatically be sent to the 5 board members separately, so there wouldn't be a reply all feature that puts you at risk for open meeting law violation of things. Really, it's what you do, not what people share with you that puts you in a position.
And does the public see that under the forms? So the rest of the public, because then it becomes open.
Sure, yeah. Are you asking, are we going to share that with every one of our 68,000 constituents? Certainly not. Would we tell the person who's filling out the form that this would go to all 5 board members? Yes, that would be the idea, I think, right?
Would there be a way to have a running list of concerns that have been brought to the board so that it is available if someone were to want to look at a website and see what other issues have been brought forward?
Yeah, or if multiple constituents see the same thing, they can say, you know, I agree with that, and I agree with that person, and I'm going to weigh in as well. I mean, it might be.
That is absolutely a possibility. You might want to consider whether or not it's in the best interest of the district to do that. We get things all the time like, you know, I don't like Mrs. Smith, who's my daughter's second grade teacher, and somebody else says, me too. Or, you know, the basketball game starts way too late. My kids, you know, a lot of different. The parking lot is this. We get feedback from people all the time, sometimes about things of significant import, like we're talking about tonight, sometimes the things that I'm not sure that it would be in the best interest of the district to list, how many people are upset with Mrs. Smith or how bad the parking lot is. In some cases. In other cases, I can totally see that, but automatically going that direction, it might be problematic in ways that we're not considering right now, just off the top of my head.
We're kind of going into BEDH as well. Do you want to explain that a little bit,
Yeah,
Andy,
absolutely.
first?
Yeah, so as you're pointing out, yeah, BEDH relates to the public participation at board meetings. The idea with this one is really for a long time, the practice has been, well, actually, I'll back up. Legally, right, the board has a lot of different options of how they, what they allow in terms of public participation. They can have the open call and allow the public to come in and speak on any subject, as was just mentioned. They can put some limits in place, for example, right, limiting it to a voting item, or they could say we're not interested in having the public speak at all at our board meetings. And for many years, our PUSD board has opted to have the second option there and have the public allowed to come in and speak to a voting item. And if they wish to speak on a topic other than one of the voting items, right, they can use one of the other communication tools, whether it's email or scheduling a meeting or other possible options that may be set up.
It might be worth noting that the default legally is no comment from the public. Our board has chosen to stay away from that extreme. It's also chosen to stay away from the extreme of anybody say anything, and found what the board to this point is determined as middle ground. Whether or not you see fit to continue with that is of course up to you. But
right. So the idea of the proposed changes, we had actually a couple different board exhibits that reflected and was very clear on the idea of having the public allowed to speak to a voting agenda item. And the practice was obviously that, but BEDH was not as clear on that. And so the intention with this proposal is to align all three of those things: the practice, both exhibits, and this BEDH policy. I'll read it just to make sure you understand, or you have it up there. But any individual desiring to address the board about a topic that is agendized on the voting section of the agenda shall complete form request to address the board. Again, that's one of the exhibits that is more clear, and give this form to the superintendent's administrative assistant prior to the start of the study and voting portion of the agenda or board meeting. And then section D also again clarifies that we're I'll jump down upon conclusion of the public comments, individual members of the board may respond to any criticism made by an individual who has addressed the board, and that I think was mentioned in Mr. Galgoski's introduction to our public comments section. So again, really trying to align current practice with our policy and our exhibits.
So I have a question going back to section A.
Yes.
It says on that study and voting section, but that hasn't been our practice. This is a duplicate where it's maybe.
That's our practice. The study and voting session is the portion you're in right now.
Yes.
Just clarifying further for the public what we mean by that.
But it looks like, according to A, that if it's an agendized item, study or voting, a member of the public could speak to it. Are we taking out the study and only allowing them? I mean, that's been the practice, though, hasn't it? We're just clarifying.
We're clarifying the practice, exactly like Andy said. Our decades-long practice, what's written and what's intended, we want them all match.
But if we wanted more input from the public, could we change it back to study and voting session so that the public would have an opportunity to talk about any agendized item? Or is
Great question. So the study and voting session is this portion of the meeting that we're in right now.
Okay.
To clarify that, those are agendized voting items, and it's referred to as the study and voting
okay, so those
session
are
of the meeting.
a study item on the agenda and a voting item on the agenda are not two separate.
Things,
They're the same thing.
Yeah, there's information items, discussion items,
right.
and voting. And
What
study
might
and
be
voting items.
study is like the first reading. Am I understanding that right?
Potentially, or this discussion is we're studying the issue.
Right.
Okay.
And I think we could always have the discussion of an open call. I mean, I think that's a separate issue from this. This is just clarifying clarifying what we currently do. I mean, if the board desires to look at a full open call to the public, then I think we should have that discussion maybe as a future agenda item. You know, we can always table this and look at this as a future agenda item to discuss and talk about the merits and negatives of an open call to the public.
My problem with their open call is that we can't respond to the public,
Right.
and so it becomes an air my grievances more than it becomes a productive two-way conversation. And you know, I hate the fact that somebody's got a grievance and they want to air it, and then we are made to be silent about it, and that to me is not productive.
Right. I would like to be able to see if maybe when we do have a first reading that we could hear then, and then the following month we may hear again from someone else because now they understand it better. Just like we get the opportunity for 2 months, you know, to look at it for 1 month and then have another opportunity to look at it before we vote. I think it's great if the public has both of those same opportunities. And one of the points Andy made was if we could clarify, maybe be more clear in our agenda item as to what the discussion is versus identifying a policy that maybe might be hard for the public to find. We know where to find it, but it might be challenging for someone in the general public to know what that means. I don't know if that's allowed. I mean, you know,
Sarah,
Sarah, what we can do and what we can't do
comment
on
on
an
that really
agenda.
quickly?
So when I complete the board packet, there's agenda items that we post, and then each agenda item that has an attachment, you'll see a little PDF icon. The members of the public can go onto our website. They can go onto Board Books, which is the software that I use to prepare the agendas, and those attachments are all there.
This is fully available to the public.
Yes,
Got you.
always
Thank you.
available.
I don't know what comes to me and what apparently
So the
everything that
packet
comes
that
to
I
me
send
comes to
you,
them. Okay.
Yes, that's on the website. You click on agenda.
Okay.
And it pulls up the agenda
Excellent.
and
I think that's
all
excellent practice.
attachments. Yeah.
No attempt to obfuscate. In fact,
No.
the opposite is true.
So
Yeah.
I'm probably in the same camp as Jen, that I'd like a little bit more input from the public, but what are our options
Yeah.
at this meeting?
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at. I can appreciate why we have a public comment prior to a voting item because we can discuss it, just like we are now. And when we can't do it in an open call to public. However, we're not necessarily providing a platform that anybody can come up and voice a concern, that the public can hear. And that's why I asked the question, if the comment that is sent to us, can the public see it? I'm afraid of the next door type of platform. I don't want that to happen, so.
We already have something like that. It's called Facebook. People.
Exactly. So I'm not, but what I feel like is this could be a very healthy discussion, one that could be put in our retreat, which is an open public forum, in our retreat that's coming up. Because I think we have a lot of great ideas. And then we ask that maybe we come up with some other ideas as well from the staff, just kind of what you've seen. I mean, human nature is, I don't like criticism. I don't think anybody really does. And to sit up here and just take criticism is not a healthy way to just receive information. So if it's constructive, I want it to be constructive. I hope it's constructive, but it's not all the time. And I see where in certain public entities, they put limitations on open call to public. So then it becomes a limited call to public anyway. So I'd like to find some ground, but I think this is a robust discussion that needs to occur. Are there any other comments? Because I think I want to split this vote, if I can.
I'll just mention that, Jen, what you brought up about a Google form, I think that would be I want to run it by Dave Paoli, our attorney, to see if there's any open meeting implications that I'm not thinking of, but I've been doing this for a little bit on kind of both sides of the dais, at the city council and here, and I think that's really workable. That's a venue where, if Mr. Nelson or anybody else had a comment, it could get to all 5 board members as is, and there wouldn't be the possibility of kind of the crosstalk that gets us into a gray area with open meeting law. It would go right to you, and you could get back with them individually, and it would be the effective equivalent, always except for we wouldn't provide a public theater venue for people, but you'd hear from everybody, in one click to all 5 board members, and that would provide an additional, if people are really interested in getting their message to you, that provides yet another avenue. I like it. If people are interested in transparency, well, that's you communicating with them. That's not them being able to communicate with others in public. That's not your responsibility, is to provide that venue. If you want to provide that venue, there's certainly other districts that do that. We could consider that. But that's not one of your legal responsibilities to do so. And I'm not hearing anybody leaning into the open call to public piece at this point.
Well, I'm curious, do we need to take a vote on this? Can we leave things as they are? Can we table this? Have a discussion at our retreat? And get this nailed down to a place that everybody feels more comfortable with?
My only concern would be that currently, policy and exhibits don't exactly
Right.
align.
Don't match
And
with
so,
each other as well as
if
we'd
we,
like.
if we could align them, and then even, whenever it's time to bring it back to the board and
Right.
have that
Yes.
discussion, but.
So that's the other alternative, is go ahead and vote on this, make a decision tonight, and if it's in alignment, then we can still have the discussion at the retreat on if there are additional changes we want to make.
Right, have a future agenda item to discuss overall public comment and whether or not the policy needs to change.
Okay, so what alignment, there's two, I see it in BEDH as alignments. I think there's BEDB is just further clarification, correct?
Yeah, about your intent for community comments. If you intend for that to be a forum for people to go around the other piece of policy you've got, great. Don't make any changes to the wording and leave that open to each board member's whim in the future. But if you intend your standing policies to be in effect the way that they are intended by board members, I'd recommend that you add that wording, but it's up to you.
My feeling on BEDB is we're defining it specifically that we are sharing public comments that we're hearing. And then if we are considering more of a transparent, more open means that the public can speak to, I'm okay voting on BEDB, but tabling BEDH.
I think BEDH is the one that is causing us more, well, I think it's causing us more struggles among the fact that our exhibit does not match it. So if we could get our exhibit currently to match BEDH and table, I would go the opposite as you, Stan, is what I mean.
You could do both.
table BEDB.
And then you can bring that up a month from now in another, anytime you want. You can revisit this every month. You can focus on student success instead, or you can talk about this many, many times. It's completely up to you.
And I'm fine tabling it for a month, even if we're not aligned, just because I think more discussion is better than less discussion.
Yeah, I'm with you. What alignment would we need to speak on? One, paragraph A, right? Taking out the study and voting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the exhibit makes very clear.
Just A and D.
The exhibit makes very clear the wording in A from this policy. So this is the policy. We felt the language is unclear, that's why we bring it to you. The exhibit makes very clear what the board's long-term policy and procedure has been.
Okay.
That, our long-term policy and procedure, literally for decades, matches with the exhibit, but depending on how you interpret it, may or may not match with the wording in the policy itself, which is why Andy's bringing to you a recommendation to make all of those match. Now, if you want to change how you do that, I think that's a separate issue that you should bring up as soon as you're wanting to bring that up, a month from now, whatever.
So in BEDB, I know we're focused on the community comment section, but if you go down to G2A, so this policy, the agenda policy, it says public comments on study and voting session topics. So again, that's another policy that doesn't quite align with BEDH. They're kind of saying slightly different things. Yeah. And so, and then BEDH is the form that is used for the community comment. So again,
there's the exhibit on the board there that attaches to, refers to, and is referred to within BEDH. This BEDH/E makes very clear what study and voting agenda item and topic are you addressing? Or if there's a public hearing, we have a public hearing on the budget, some other things. Each of those is open for public comment in your meetings. In addition to the many other ways that people have to get with you, this is a venue for that. So this has been our procedure for years, what the board has confirmed time and again over the decades. Again, moderate, middle ground in my view, but you may feel differently. Clearly, some members of the public do. But it's clear what we are doing and intend to be doing. But the policy attached to this is a little bit ambiguous in its wording, so I thought, let's just clear up that wording. Nobody's asking to change anything here at all. So you could table it and just leave it. It'll remain ambiguous until you address it another time. Or you could confirm the wording, match everything up, and then come back to this issue of an open call in the future if you like. There's a number of ways to approach it.
I think to align things, as I look at BEDH, I think taking out study and was a mistake. I think that should be included in there.
Yeah, because then it
That's the
aligns with
title.
BEDB
Yeah,
as
then it
well.
aligns with-
Yep,
yeah.
and that's the title of this section of the agenda.
Sure.
We don't
Yeah.
have a voting
When
session
people see that,
separate.
we've had people in the past say, wait a minute, you're talking about this, it's a study item, I thought I could speak to it. We've literally had that from people in this room in the last couple of months. So we thought, let's use this wording, make it more clear for the average person in the public who comes to our meetings.
It would line up with our agenda better if it said study and voting session, because that's the language we have in that,
Yep.
in each agenda as we move forward.
And we have to change BEDB in 2 different spots to make it match the study and voting as well.
No, it already says study and voting, right?
It does say it in BEDB, but if we remove it in BEDH, there isn't study and, it's just voting.
Yeah.
So item G2A aligns with what is currently in there, and then item G2B has study and voting session.
That's the title. Again, that title was confusing for some of us on the dais as recently as 30 minutes ago. It's clearly confusing for the public.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were trying to clarify that for you.
But if we're
you feel
gonna
that's not
clarify
a good idea,
Should we clarify it
up to you.
in all locations then?
Exactly.
Yeah, and just make it the same.
We'd have to.
Study and voting session.
And all.
Yeah, let's table it. I feel like there's some refinement we have to do to this. For one, I just want to say that I appreciate the discussion that we've had even with the public. I understand their viewpoint, and I'm open-minded to it. I really am. Ms. DiCarlo in particular, we had some good discussion, and she made some very valid points that really opened my eyes. And so I think we tabled this one. It's a very healthy discussion, figure out how we can get this more open to the public without opening up the district to something that, people just talk off the cuff and we're not able to prepare, and whereas when we have a study and voting session or item, we can intelligently discuss it because we have at least done some homework in preparation for it. But I understand the screening, the issue of perceived screening. We would hope we'd be good board members to put something on the agenda. I think we have. We talked about class sizes. We talked about scores, things that have been brought to our attention. I mean, there's several items that, have come to me, and I know that we put them on the agenda, or even during the board meeting.
Well, we've had a request to have someone come and basically talk about creationism.
That's right.
In our meeting, so.
And it took 2 board members to do.
Do that. So that was a direct result of the community comments coming forward and getting an agenda item on the agenda for us.
Okay. So I'd like to, go ahead.
I guess I would make the motion that we table item 7B3 for further discussion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right. We will table that. What I'd like to have it on a discussion at the retreat, for one.
Let's talk about whether
If we
it's
can.
best at the retreat. You've added one other thing tonight, so I think we've got 7 substantial items for your retreat that could take anywhere between, this has taken longer than I anticipated, for instance. Could take anywhere between 20 minutes and an hour and a half each. You might be looking at a 10-hour agenda, first of all. Secondly, because you're scheduling the retreat during the day, it may be less accessible to some members of the public who work. And so you might want to, totally open to whatever you want, but you might want to consider doing it at our next evening meeting when people are yeah. And again, once again, up to you. But if you really want to dig into the mission and vision and school schedules and some of the other things that you talked about, then you probably want to leave yourself time for that. So adding another substantial item to that may or may not be what you want. I like the idea of coming back to it as soon as we can.
Okay. What do y'all feel? I mean, it's not a vote.
I think we'll have better public participation, or at least more open to the public if it's not during the workday, potentially.
If you do it at your March meeting, you're looking at a difference of, between 7 and 10 days, depending on when we schedule the retreat, so to speak. And again, like you say, in the evening, so that opens it up to more people being here, which is what I'm hearing you want, and I like that idea.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to table this. We'll table it till the March 4th meeting. And that's a 30-day period for us to get public input as well, more robust conversations. Okay. Item 7B4, consider approving changes to the current PUSD bus rental and field trip schedules. Mr. Moore.
All right, thank you. It's been a little bit since we've looked at our rental schedules and specifically, wait a second. Well, let me back up. We rent our buses out because it's a good community thing to do, especially for our camps around the city. We also have lots of field trips and athletic events that require a driver in between the morning and the afternoon routes. And so we just need to make sure that we're always looking at the cost when it comes to what bus drivers make. And in this case, specifically what we're trying to draw when it comes to our drivers to drive a rental. It's not in their contract, it's not something, and we need them to because it's also a revenue, one of the few things we control on a revenue side is the rental of our buildings and transportation to the community. But the current rate is actually lower than what their hourly rate is as a bus driver. And so we haven't looked at this in a little bit. I thought it was 2019 is when we found it in agenda. Kim Barker, our transportation director, thought we addressed rate tweaks in 22, but it has been a while. And so really we're looking at changing a few things. And I try to color coordinate it in your book or in your attachments. And it's really just taking the driver rate from a rental standpoint from $30 an hour to $35. Our drivers do not make that amount, but they do make the 20, the 21s, and when we do rent to our community, it is a for-profit activity for the district. And so every raise we give and their rate goes up, it closes that gap for profit. Also, the daily vehicle rental fee from $130 to $150. That is, again, really personnel related on the amount of time Gary Chartier, our civics rental, Kim Barker, Jenny Merrick, the admin assistant, works on these things, and their pay has increased. When it comes to field trips, we were having our sites through tax credit or whatever their funding sources pay $25 per hour because that includes benefits. What we're really doing is asking for our drivers to get paid $22 for a civic rental, and that then puts it so that we're operating at a loss. $22 plus benefits is about $26 and like 70-some cents. So we're not here to make money off of our schools at all. And so it's really more at cost. And so we're asking from a field trip standpoint for it to go from $25 to $27. It's a few pennies over what the cost is, including benefits. And then also just because fuel has went up, $1 to $1.15 per mile. And you may say it doesn't cost that much for, the buses get 7 miles per gallon or 6. You do the math, that's more than what it costs. The mile per gallon really offsets the maintenance cost, the depreciation of the buses, and all of those activities, because that's not a chargeable thing. And so from a diesel, the yellow bus, we're asking for it to go from $1 per mile to $1.15 per mile. And then also the white activity buses go from 90 cents a mile to $1.05 a mile. And all of that is really just more inflation, prices, salaries going up based on minimum wage, and that's the recommendation to the board.
Who drives the white activity bus that we don't pay them?
Usually it's the coaches.
Oh, okay. We're already paying them to do this.
We're already paying
All
them,
right.
so there isn't a driver cost.
Just wondering who's driving our kids
they're,
around.
they're the GPS automatic drivers,
No driver.
We just do an open call to the public.
Yeah.
And see who wants to.
We have
Self-driving
anyone come and
buses.
just say, hey, who wants to drive a bus?
But we rent the white buses to the public as well, right, or not?
I
can't think of scenarios in which we've rented.
I have not.
Because I see no driver charge on the white buses, like if a school needed a bus for 6 kids.
They, like the coach drives. So that is, the white buses, if a driver, let's say a coach wasn't able to drive and we would provide a driver through transportation, there would be a charge there.
With them, so there's
But 99%.
So it's not going to be, Skyview School renting a white bus and providing their own driver.
Correct.
Yeah, they're only used internally.
It's internal, and and thus covered under our comprehensive liability insurance for vehicles.
Okay.
So really, the whole driving of this is buses cost more. I just had a bus priced out, and it's $197,000 for a yellow bus now. And also, really, from a driver standpoint, the incentive for having them drive above and beyond their routes. Right now, they're making less, some of them, than what they're driving around, and we want to raise that to $22 an hour and for them. Plus
Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
The propane buses that we've gotten, has that been a bust? Has that been, what is?
they have very limited use because of the lack of horsepower. Really, they can't go up and down. They can't go down to Phoenix. They can't. Hills are not very
Fuel spots probably is an issue.
So we do have some routes, but they are specifically for those routes because it's in the wheelhouse.
Yeah, they work for flatter in-town routes. We
Yes.
certainly have some of those.
We have a
Send
few.
them down to Phoenix and back. There's a range issue and the hill issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So definitely diesel. Is it diesel, obviously? Yeah. Okay.
Yellow buses are diesel. Yes.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Any more discussion on this, or do you want to vote? Okay.
No.
I'll take a motion to approve the changes to the current PUSD bus rental and field trip schedules.
I'll make that motion.
Motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed then. We have information and discussion items. 7C1, school board primary or summary budget report. Mr. Moore?
Before I say as presented, you might notice that I did put asterisks next to some of the funds because in the previous governing board, I can't remember who it was, but asked,
It was me. Thank you.
I suppressed who asked it. Because I know you're going to be asking lots of
Resident.
stuff
I
from
know.
me, and it just is going to kill me.
So excited about this
I actually
part.
did that during the board meeting, otherwise I would have forgotten. But
Realize she's going to ask good questions. I'm just telling
I think that's subjective. Can you define good?
Brian won't agree with that.
Anyway, so it has the asterisks on what does not allow carry forward. And if there are any questions, as presented.
Thank you. Item 7C2, future agenda items. So we know we're going to do, revisit the 2 policies.
Now, we can do it during the retreat, but like I mentioned, you've got a lot.
Is there a downside of putting it on the agenda so the public knows that it's a possibility we're going to talk about it, or do we have to?
Well, I think you want to make sure we're going to talk about it, or they would come and
It's on the
then if we
agenda.
don't get to
You
it.
don't have to talk about it at length, but I think
Yeah.
you're required to talk about it.
Right.
Yeah, and I understand, like, just, for the interest of how many items we have on the retreat and stuff. And, I think it's I'd love to hear more from the public that's not the same letter, you know, and, because and honestly, it's, you know, how many people really, and out of the scope of the whole population, what are we looking at? So I think that if we can really reach that during the meeting and maybe just kind of limit a little bit, we'll look at the items on there. I think it's going to be robust again.
I love the idea of having a way for you to hear what people say and get it on the agenda if two of you agree. I think we kind of got that in place, frankly, but we could provide another avenue.
Yeah. But,
Okay.
okay. So that's any other items we want to see? What about the BEDH intercom system?
It's already fixed.
Is that done?
Woo woo! I love you.
I'm just kidding. I heard these two school board members fixed it.
Yeah, we worked on it real hard while we were there.
And Jen, you know, wired it.
The wires were crossed.
Yeah.
I just said.
We know a lot about that stuff.
Is it too soon? I know you guys did a bunch of work. I'm sorry.
Our principal brought it appropriately to the attention of the IT department, and 2 days later it was fixed.
Awesome.
Nice.
That's how things are supposed to work.
Yeah. Awesome.
Good job.
2 days is too long.
2 days is
That's
too
right,
long.
buddy.
I agree.
Hey, love the color of your house, by the way. It looks great. Yeah. All right. And then item 7C3, book study for March 4th. We'll start again. I thought that was very fruitful. You know,
I
it's pretty
loved
cool.
it. Yeah.
It's cool.
I was feeling like I could read more chapters, but since we only have 15 minutes to discuss it, we should probably keep it to 2. I'm like, oh, we can't actually talk about those chapters. We're going to have to
It was great.
limit it.
We knocked it all out in 14 minutes and 30 seconds.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect, perfect.
So March 4th is our next meeting, starting at 5:15 for the regular study and voting. And then the 14th is a full PD day for PUSD, no students.
Can
And
I
so-
just extend an invitation to all of you? You're welcome to come join any of our sessions. It is my absolute favorite PD day that we put on. We call it a choose your own. So we have about 40 different sessions that are being offered in 3 one-hour blocks. And most of the sessions are being put on by our very own staff members. So sharing something that they're passionate about, something that's working in their classroom. But you're welcome to come join any session or just to come and visit that day if you're available. But it's a lot of fun and there's a lot of learning that happens. So.
Do we need to let you know in advance that we're coming, or we can just show up?
You guys can come and just join any of them that you'd like.
And where's it at?
At Prescott High School.
Prescott High School.
Yep, from 8 to about 11:30 that morning.
Okay.
Great, thank you. And then, so observance of President's Day, so it looks like a 4-day weekend, so 17th is off. And our board